Hi, welcome everyone. We are here today as Hispanic Heritage Month is wrapping up, but we were able to find two of our favorite folks in town to tell their story about becoming lactation consultants in Portland, Oregon, and in our great state. We are OHSU PSU Certificate of Human Lactation program, and we offer Pathway 2 for becoming certified, as well as offering lactation education. But we're here today more to hear about how our colleagues became lactation consultants and what inspired them. I'd also like Dixie to introduce herself.
My name is Dixie Wetzel, and I'm an adjunct faculty member in the lactation program, and I'm one of the instructors right now for the lactation education courses, and I also do a lot of the advising for the program.
Great. So I think I'll have Elvia Graves start telling her story, how she became interested in lactation and how she is using it in her job today.
Okay. Hi, I'm Elvia Graves, and I started getting interested in lactation when I worked as a nutrition technician in the Women and Children's, Women, Infant and Children's, known as WIC, and Spokane, Washington, because women would come and talk to me postpartum, prenatally and postpartum. And prenatally, they would say, oh, yes, I am breastfeeding for sure. And then we would see them like 1 or 2 months postpartum, and they would have started breastfeeding, and then were no longer breastfeeding or partially breastfeeding. And so we just couldn't figure out what was happening in that time. So I became interested in that. And I went to a week-long training to learn more about breastfeeding. And I got a certificate that said that I was a lactation educator. So I came back to my office, and this was an office that served rural areas. So we would travel like an hour or so outside of like the city to go to like Airway Heights or in farther, and just see these participants of WIC. Some of them were English speakers and some of them were Spanish speakers. So for the English speakers, I designed a small short class to just discuss just general information about breastfeeding and give them some resources that we had available in the area. And then for Spanish speakers, I would just kind of meet with them one-on-one. So the more I started doing that work, the more I realized I needed more skills to be able to help these people. So when I moved to Oregon in 2011, I looked for jobs in WIC because that's what I knew. And at that time, they had a position as a peer counselor or working in the peer counseling program. So it was a small part-time. So I started working with 2 other people in the program. One was a lactation consultant, another one was a lactation educator like me. And so we would put together classes and meet with participants one-on-one, and we would even send them information through their phones. But I got to also spend more time developing some clinical skills when the lactation consultant would see the patient. At that time, I was also working as a support group facilitator at a local hospital. And we just had a support group in English, and it was for new parent support group. So all that was going well, but the hospital support group, these moms were coming to me with more complex questions. And I just kept reaching out to the IBCLCs that I knew, and then they would ask me questions. I'm like, oh, why didn't I ask that question? So more and more every time. And, just like they say, the more you learn, the more you know that you don't know much, and the more you have to learn, right? So I started to look into what it would take for me to become a lactation consultant. And I had just a couple of classes, college classes, that were more like English composition and things like that. So I think it was 2012 that I finally decided to go back to school and start taking some of those prerequisites to be qualified to sit for the exam. And since one of the requirements was to have had experience, with patients or one-on-one, like some clinical experience, but providing support to people, I thought, well, maybe while I'm doing this thing, acquiring those that experience, I can be doing some of the classes. So it took a long time. I only took like 1 or 2 classes per term because I was also a full-time mom. And so I was getting pretty close to being done with my classes when I met Dr. Nan Dahlquist through the hospital that I was working for. And I don't know, I fell in love with her. And I asked her if she would be willing to just kind of let me come and just follow her around and work with her at her pediatric clinic. And she said, oh, of course, yes, we need more people, to be doing this work. And so I worked with her probably from 2015 to 2016, right before I sat for my exam. And I learned so much. And I wasn't required to have those hours because I had already accumulated the hours that I needed for the to qualify for the exam, but it was definitely super helpful and enriching. So, and having her support was just incredible, and hers and the other 2 lactation consultants that work with her. So I sat for the exam, and I thought it was, I was super nervous, but I honestly was like, okay, well, we'll give it a try, and then couldn't believe that I would pass. But so I just told myself, it's okay, nobody gets perfect the first time they try something. So I was sure that I didn't pass, but another nurse at the hospital and one of the midwives, we took the exam at the same time, and all 3 of us passed, and I was just so thrilled. Yeah. So so then I stayed with so then Dr. Dahlquist hired me to work 1 day a week at her clinic, and I've been working with her and working at the hospital. Then I realized that just the one time moment that I would see these parents, especially in the hospital setting, in the inpatient setting, was not enough. And so I kept on doing classes, education classes, both in English and Spanish. So I collaborated with the midwives and Virginia Garcia. They were doing a centering program there. So I would come in one of their sessions for centering, and just talk about breastfeeding and just answer mom's questions. anything that they want to talk about, all the myths, cultural and myths and just everything. I thought it was super helpful for the participants of the class, as well as the midwives, because then they would hear things that they hadn't heard before. And for myself, because it allowed me to get to know these patients that they were going to deliver at the hospital. And so I would see them prenatally, and then through their stay at the hospital, and then postpartum, either because they were coming to Hillsborough Pediatrics, or because I would see them at Virginia Garcia, or because they would come to the support group. So there was a connection there, and it was great, but I still wanted to do some more. So since I had almost all my prerequisites for nursing, when I finished my prerequisites for IBCLC, I decided to go back to nursing school, and now I passed, and that's what I did. So now that I work as a nurse in Hillsborough Medical Center, I am able to not only see one feeding, but see all the feedings of that night for 3 couplets, right? That's my workload. And I am so happy that I have the opportunity to work with a diverse group of people, and those lactation skills are so important in my work as a labor delivery postpartum nurse.
Wow, you have really shaped a path for yourself from, oh, I just had this job, to suddenly a full career that required a lot of effort and dedication.
Yeah,
And
I enjoyed every bit of it.
Well, that's and right before we got on, Elvia mentioned how she is hopefully getting onto the day shift, but I know how important your help must be in the middle of the night, because I'm sure you can share about sometimes that's when people are ready to give up, and to have somebody cheerleading them on at 2 a.m, I'm sure it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I will definitely miss about night shift. Yeah.
Well, hopefully you can convince your other coworkers that, to continue in your in your tradition to support.
Yeah, it's so great. We would work as a team, right? And so they knew I like lactation, so they would whenever they struggle with something, they would come and say, oh, you need to come and see my patient. And instead of just saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that, I would say, well, tell me what you've tried, what difficulties are you encountering? And then we just would have that conversation, and then we would go in there together, and then they would see what I was doing, and then we would walk out, and then just say, oh, so tell me, why did you do that? And we would just have those conversations. I think that's good teamwork, because they are the ones that are going to be seeing that patient every time throughout the night, right? Because it's their assignment, their responsibility. So they need to learn as well. Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Elvia, for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
You will hopefully be inspiration for many folks. And now I'd like to turn to Veronica Lopez Erickson. She works in our community, and I'm not sure of all her responsibilities at the moment, so I'm going to let her tell her story. And Dixie, is somebody joining us, it looks like? Go ahead, Veronica.
Thank you. Thank you, Elvia, for sharing your story. It's a wonderful journey. Very similar, and reminds me of how connected we are, because I think we're all connected in this universe, and very similar to my story, and just brings it full circle for me, because you ended as an RN, as a nurse, and I started as an RN. So, and then now I'm at WIC. So yeah, so I started as a community health worker actually at the county, Multnomah County, and then as a community health nurse, and mostly with our Spanish speaking communities here in Multnomah County, and became interested in lactation because we were mostly providing services, home visiting services for our Latina moms and parents and their young ones, during pregnancy and preparing them for childbirth, and then into early infancy. And a lot of the times in the training, just hearing about breastfeeding and what a marvelous thing that is for humans, for the human body to do, and to provide for infants, was just fascinating to me. And we had very little of that in nursing school when I went, and so I thought, oh, I just feel like I need to know a little bit more about lactation and how to support, when things don't go quite as planned. And because certainly we're fortunate that our communities, that our culture values breastfeeding, values motherhood, and supports and honors that role that we play in our society. Unfortunately, in society, this doesn't quite mesh with that. And so while moms do initiate breastfeeding in the Latino culture, we just don't get the right support to continue, and our breastfeeding rates drop off after 6 months. And so I started to look at, why is that, and why are we not supporting this amazing provision that we have for our future generations. And like sitting in as a guest in people's homes, and after they've had their baby, and just marveling at how well the baby would nurse at the breast, and mom would be wearing a hat, and I would ask, it's summertime, are you cold? And she would say, no, I have to cover my head so that my milk doesn't get cold. And I'd say, okay, tell me more. And and then remembering that my own mom would wear cotton balls in her ears, to try to keep her milk production up, and how my grandmother would prepare her different teas and herbal remedies to help with her milk lactation, with her milk production and lactation, and using a lot of cinnamon and other herbs, and remembering the cabbage leaves too. Sometimes moms would say, come in, I can't get up because I have my cabbage on, and I thought, what? And would walk in, and and sit down and say, oh, tell me about that. And they'd say, well, I feel like it's too much. I'm trying to feed this baby, and she's not having it right now, and so I have to make sure my supply is up, and so I have to boil the cabbage, and sometimes I would walk into a home, and mom would say, oh, can you bring me that atole, or that oatmeal that I prepared, or that my mom prepared. She left it there on the table for me, and I'm nursing my baby. And I was just happy to oblige and happy to learn. And that was just my fascination with human body, and what it's capable of. And like you said, and watching our Latino peers and colleagues enter the workforce, and supporting them with a culturally specific program called Empezando con Salud. And one of the things I advocated for in our funding was funding for lactation, and being able to give back to our community by empowering our colleagues, our home visitors, to pursue their lactation certification. And so I was so proud that two of my colleagues, nurse colleagues, were studied with Dixie and completed their lactation courses at PSU, and then sat for the exam. And I thought, what, couple more people of color in the lactation profession. It was just the most proud I've been of that. And then after that, I found myself back as a community health nurse in our Black African American community with Healthy Birth Initiatives. And I thought, well, here we have an opportunity to really look at the racial health disparities in breastfeeding in our beloved African American community. It's my turn. I want to pursue this lactation certification as well, and bring others up with me. And so I started the lactation course with Dixie as well, and we we had the unfortunate experience of COVID. COVID hit the pandemic right in the middle of our course, and having to adjust and adapt, really does prepare us for adaptation when we're working with moms about how to support and how to continue to learn together, because we had to quickly readjust and be on a virtual platform, and we had already been, so most of us were familiar with the platform, and it was just a time of a really huge learning curve to have to do that. And I did have to take a break. So I did get diagnosed with an illness. I had cancer, and they had to take it out, and so I took a break. And this was fortunately after I had completed the courses, and I was supposed to be studying for the exam, but I couldn't quite get myself to do that, and had to really work on my healing and recovery. And in about a year after I had planned to sit for the exam, I was able to sit for the exam a year ago, September, and was able to get the results just right at Christmas time. I thought, oh, will I not know until the new year, or will I get an early Christmas present? And sure enough, I did get an early Christmas present, and found out that I passed the exam, and was very proud of that, because I know my family was very supportive. It was a lot of sacrificing of watching them go canoeing or kayaking, and me sitting at the picnic bench with my lactation books and things like that whole summer. And but wherever we went, we were together, and they knew mom has to study, and she's going to bring her books, and we have to make room for that. So lots of sacrifices, but it was well worth it. I think part of being in this profession is that advocacy piece, and advocating for people of color to come up and join the ranks, and as well as supporting those pursuing this certification, and then the advocacy for all communities of color, and bringing up those breastfeeding rates, and being able to use our voice, to use this profession to elevate legislature that supports moms and breastfeeding and chest feeding people and birthing people, that we know that this is part of what we need to do to secure and thrive as future generations. And I'm just so proud that I'm able to be part of this profession. And even now in my new role, now I find myself in WIC as a interim nutrition programs manager. And so it's just been an amazing journey in lactation, and continuing to learn and continuing to advocate. We had a formula shortage crisis in this country, and we just had to ramp up those efforts to support lactation and support breastfeeding. And okay, you're partially breastfeeding. We can get you to do a little bit more breastfeeding, and not have to rely so much on formula while we have this shortage. And doing all that advocacy for our participants has really meant a lot, to be a part of this profession, and to continue to grow the workforce and its diversity is definitely something I'm continuing to work on as a part of my goal. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you today.
Well, thank you, Veronica. I hadn't realized that you now are in a position potentially to foster other folks with their lactation education and skills upgrades. This is a good thing.
Yeah,
We are infiltrating the world, aren't we?
Yes. yes, definitely. Yeah, I love supporting our peer counselors, and I said, as a new leader here, I fully support your goals of continuing your education in lactation. If you want to pursue a CLC or even an IBCLC, we can do it. We can do it together. The same message goes out to our nutrition assistants and our dietitians, anybody. And right now we, as the state WIC office does promote a breastfeeding training that we are all required to take, regardless of our role. And I think it's wonderful that, from our office assistants and receptionists to our dietitians, regardless of the role that you have in WIC, you have the skills and just asking the question, how is it going with breastfeeding? Oh, you didn't think about breastfeeding yet? Okay, well, let me get you that appointment, and all the touch points for our participants will be with somebody who will be there to say, how's it going with breastfeeding? Just to plant that seed and continue that support.
Yeah, that's so important. Brittany, I don't know if you're where you're beaming in from, but if you have any questions for our speakers, or if you're just listening right now, let us know if you'd like to chime in. Okay. Well, I know we had kind of promised that we would be done by 12:10, so I want to respect everyone's time. Oh, Brittany says she's listening and driving, so kind of hard to ask a bunch of questions, but we thank you so much for joining us, all of you, and hope to see more of all of us in the future at other events. We are going to host another drop-in session in November on the 17th, which is Premature Baby Awareness Day. So if anyone is interested, we will have a NICU lactation consultant here to talk at that point. But we so appreciate Elvia and Veronica coming in to share their experience and their stories about bringing their lactation skills to the Latino community. And we appreciate you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and stop
Thank
the
you.
recording.
Thanks for having us.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks for coming.